Coffee with a Capper, we do this once a month, usually, unless the universe is traveling. So here we are. We have Brad Kelly here to give us an update on the industry and mortgages and all. I think it was last month, Brad, we were having the conversation. And then Steph and I were talking after the fact, and then you came back, and we had joked about if you're working with buyers or waiting with buyers, as we joke. A lot of people that are working with buyers, I'll use my spirit fingers, might be waiting with their buyers. And if you're waiting with your buyers, wait faster. Brad left. And Brad will stay with us for the duration, or unless he gets sick of us, he might leave. Don't know. But Brad actually exited his screen because he was taking a call, and he came back in, and he's like, I'm just going to jump in real quick. I got to let you know, rates actually went up. So I'm sure you have more great news to deliver. We'll give Brad that in a second. Rose Parisi from Parisi & Associates is here. The better half of Rose and Joseph is Rose for sure, so we asked her to join us. And I think given the vote, and clearly he did because there's enough room on camera for both of you. And you're still in the honeymoon period. We'll get to that in a second. So, but he didn't want to snuggle close. He's out talking to the humans, getting more business. But Rose is going to talk about their experience. They came from elsewhere. They're here playing with us now, and they're kicking ass and taking names. So we wanted to invite you on to find out more about your business. First, live from his basement, Brad Kelly.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate
Looks like you're
that,
on a fishing trip or something.
Great intro.
Yeah, no,
it is a great intro. We love you, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's great. You know, I've had 3 too many kids, I think, is what the problem is. And they're all home with me today. So
and Erin is a teacher, and she's on a teacher workshop. I've used my spirit fingers twice now.
She claims she's really working.
Oh, okay.
It seems like every other school has teacher workshops today except for hers.
Oh, so you think she actually has a teacher workshop, but she told you she was going to said office, and you think she might be at Hagarita's or somewhere else right now, maybe.
Yeah, who knows?
Little liquid lunch? Yeah, who knows?
But yeah, hey everybody, how you guys doing? You know, just another day in the really relaxing mortgage world out there. You know, rates are continuing to creep upwards. I don't know if everybody noticed that the Fed raised the rate. I think it was 2 days ago. Yeah, something like that. So the Fed raised the Fed rate by a quarter, which is the first of what they're projecting to be 7 hikes this year, which is interesting because they only have 6 meetings left. Or 6 meetings. So that's a little bit of a thing that's different than normal with the Feds in the sense that they typically have a meeting and they make a decision on whether they're going to raise rates or not. And that throws some uncertainty out there because, you know, when are they going to randomly throw in that other rate hike if they're doing 7? What you'll see, and this is something when COVID hit and rates came down, everybody was calling me because the Fed rate went to 0 and they wanted the 0 rate on their mortgage, which mortgages and the Fed rate aren't the same thing.
I was just going to ask you to clarify that for those of us that aren't doing the long division at home. Help us understand and how they correlate and affect each other.
So the Fed rate is what the Fed lends money at. Okay, and they lend it to banking institutions of some sort, okay, as a typical thing. So when they're trying to stimulate the economy, they lower the Fed rate so it's cheaper to get money, and in turn it's cheaper for lending purposes. Now, it's more intended as a short-term rate, I guess is the best way to put it, whereas like a 30-year fixed mortgage is more of a long-term rate. You know, so it's a little different. It does have an impact. It does trickle down, but as a general trend, it's already built in to the rates that you see mortgage-wise before the Feds change the rate. So, you know, that quarter hike the other day actually stabilized the rate market. You know, so since then, rates have been fairly stable, flat, maybe a little bit to the better since that happened. And, you know, I think basically the only thing that was real negative about what was said there was that the Feds are also, you know, making a strong effort to eliminate their bond and mortgage-backed securities portfolio that they own at this point in time, which puts a little bit concerned out there because it's like, okay, who's going to buy it? You know, because they bought it up to drive the rates down. Now they're saying, oh, we want to get rid of it. You know, so you've got a different market. One of the things I will say that I'm seeing, and you should kind of expect a little bit more of, is as rates go up, we're gonna get further away from your vanilla stuff. So your conventional FHA, VA, USDA, which through COVID was the lion's share of what was out there.
Mm.
Okay, and for that matter, it was mostly conventional that people were going because it was just so hard to get a property. You're going to start to see the other non-government lending institutions start get back into the ring because now they can get something more than 3% for their
Mm.
money. So let's start lending, on things like investor programs and doctor programs that are intended for new doctors where they may not qualify for conventional loans, but now they qualify for a loan because there's kind of a faith that they're going to be in a good income environment, things of that nature. You're going to start to see a lot more of that pop up. What ends up happening when the rates go higher, I know, like when I bought my first house with my wife, it was back in the day when there was 80/20s, and I know they're the big evil and all that stuff, but there was thousands of products at that point in time, and you started talking about adjustable rate mortgages and fixed mortgages and other things that are outside the box because, people were willing to lend their money because they could get a good return on it. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that you're going to start to see some more flexibility in options for your buyers. Even if the rates are higher, they may be able to do something different, or buyers that normally wouldn't qualify, like, with self-employed people that struggle to get qualified sometimes, you might see some products that start to come up that are more supportive of that type of world.
So as a reminder, I love that you brought up the self-employed. As a reminder for our agents who are 1099, independent contractors, or anybody who has a client who's self-employed, what is the window that you need from them to show income?
It's not typically
sighs heavily and rolls eyes. This is one of his favorite subjects. Yes.
Yeah. It's not super cut and dry. As a general trend, it's 2 years tax returns, okay, and you need to be in business for 2 years. Okay. That being said, like I said, there's flexibilities in that. Mm-hmm. There's times when if you've been in business 5 years, you only need 1 year's tax returns. Okay. And things of that nature. So it really depends on the longevity of your business and who you are and like what you do and things of that nature and what your qualifications are. But as a general trend, you need 2 years tax returns. That being said, I will also kind of follow up on that. There is a lot of agents in the office that come and see me regularly around this time of year where they're like, hey, I'm thinking I want to buy a house this year. Okay. Whether it's an investment property or owner occupied, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Can you take a look at my tax returns and tell me what I'm going to qualify for? Because you have an opportunity, if you haven't filed yet, to maybe claim a little bit more income to be able to qualify for more. You're going to pay more taxes. I get it. Sure. But as a general trend, it's, it's a good time to kind of look at what you're doing and try to figure things out.
Okay. Before we came on the air, Rose and I were talking about so many of our agents have a bunch of planes on the runway, but they're not ready to take off. So a lot of listings that haven't taken flight yet. And we're having a panel next Wednesday after Attorney Hyde does risk mitigation. So next Wednesday at noon, we're going to have that panel and have some of our top producers talk about what they're doing to get their planes in the air. And I know a lot of people, because right now, for sure, the suitable housing clause is not enough, right? What are sellers looking for? They're looking for the confirmation of the appraisal gap. And I think 5 years ago, the appraisal gap was the time, the 15 days in between when you ordered the appraisal and when it happened. That used to be the appraisal gap. What is it now? When people are hearing appraisal gap, Bradley, help people understand why that's important to sellers and what people are able with certain projects and are not able to do to satisfy that gap.
So there's, and I'm going to kind of expand on that. So there's more than just the appraisal gap piece in play. So if you've got a 20% down conventional buyer and their lender is not trying on every property that they're making an offer on to see if we can get an appraisal waiver, then you're with the wrong lender, whoever it may be, because 20% down conventional owner occupied, I'm seeing, depending on where it is, probably appraisal waivers, a third of the time, out there. And it really puts you in a stronger position when you're making an offer and you can say, hey, we don't need an appraisal. It doesn't matter what condition your house is in. It doesn't matter, what we're dealing with here. Our offer at X is supported with an appraisal waiver, and it's not required that an appraisal is done. That's kind of a starting point with those things. Beyond that, if you're not getting an appraisal waiver or you're making an offer that requires appraisal regardless, there's a lot of instances where people are making offers where they're basically saying, hey, my buyer's offering you $350 and I'm willing, and they have enough cash to cover up to $50,000 difference between purchase price and appraisal. So let's just say it's listed at $300, they're offering $350. They're now making an offer that says that they'll cover $50,000 above list price as part of their offer. There's times that it's working. It's funny. There's times when that's happening, and that's the key. Some agents are basically saying, if you don't have that, don't bother making an offer, or like we're probably not going to look at it. There's other times where, we just recently had one where and I'm using this as an example. I'm not saying it because it was me, but the listing agents, not KW agents, okay, that they know me and my team, and they actually took our buyer's offer, which was lower than another offer, over that other offer just because of lending. So if you're not aligned with, a local solid lending, institution, you're also probably doing your buyers a disservice, or your buyers are doing themselves a disservice. Your internet lenders really make it hard to compete right now. So, I would say that's the other key thing. But any of those combinations, appraisal waiver, if your buyer has the money to make up a gap, and, making sure that you're dealing with a good lending institution that's local, are keys to, what you're doing with your buyers out there.
Yeah, I love that you brought it up, and that if you didn't, I would have for sure. Like, if you don't have and again, have a conversation when you're coming into business with our ecosystem. Go talk to Brad and his team, and make sure that you're on the same page. And you should be checking in with him on a regular basis to find out things about rates and appraisal gaps and all that kind of stuff. Stay close to Brad and his team for sure. And Brad will also tell you that he doesn't do all of the things. There are some financial products that you guys don't do. Not many, but some. So make sure you know what Brad can do for you, and then obviously fill in your gaps with other people around the seacoast and have those great relationships. Something we know, which is horrifying news, and I think it's still true. Brad can stop me if I'm wrong. Our friends over, I won't even use their real name, but you'll figure out what I'm talking about. Our friends at Missile Mortgage are currently the number one lender on the planet. And that's a disservice to humankind. Like, that's just not great news. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I'm not a guy that badmouths other lenders. That's not my
Understood.
world.
Understood.
And it's they do certain things really well. If you're you're looking,
keep going. I'm just
kidding. They advertise well. They the super
they have the
stuff,
most expensive Super Bowl commercials. Good for them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the vanilla stuff, especially when the rate and term refinance stuff was going on, as long as your stuff's pretty, you're a salaried employee, and everything's pretty clean, they do a good job there. It's funny you bring that up, because I've had, like, in the last week multiple times, realtors ask me about, I forget what they call it. They have like that guaranteed pre-approval, or that, like, whatever, my company they have their version of it. It's called platinum pre-approval. And it's basically a pre-approval that says you've already run it through underwriting, reviewed all their docs, you just need a property to plug in and they're good to go type of thing.
Sure.
That's something you'll see a lot of these internet lending institutions really promote, because, to be honest with you, they need to. I don't use the platinum pre-approval often. I use it occasionally with those borderline buyers as a general trend, or if somebody asks me to do it. But typically when I'm calling a listing agent that I know in the area and I'm telling them, hey, Bob, my client's super approved, everything's in great shape. I've reviewed their income and asset docs, pulled credit, and I'm, they're going to believe me. They're not necessarily going to believe, that internet lender out there, because unfortunately most of them are order takers, and they're not, true, lending professionals, I guess is the best way to take it.
And there's no chance they're going to run into them at Vita Cantina. That's
Right.
that's a big part of the conversation. They can track you down here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me, they do. No, no, it's more the idea of who's looking at the paperwork.
Yeah.
Somebody that has been in the business for a while and knows what they're looking at and knows their guidelines, and and isn't somebody that like rolls the dice on pre-approvals is who you want to be aligned with right now, because they probably have the faith of the other agents that you're dealing with.
Yep.
So that's the key. I mean, and I'm not saying that there isn't other options out there. I know, that there's times when like maybe I'm not the best fit, or like maybe my team, if I'm not the best fit, you can talk to Kelly, and I can just stay out of the way. That's definitely an option. So, but our team as a general trend, we try to do good business, have a good reputation in the area, be competitive, and try to do everything we can to make your buyers stand out when they make an offer. So, whatever we can do to help. And if there's something that people suggest, we're always all for, something else that makes us look better, so.
Yeah. Have that great local relationship, because I think to Bradley's point, there's so many people, and you hear this all the time. Well, we've got all of our investments. We've got 15 accounts with, Bank of wherever, right? And in the grand scheme of things, cool. And they're on paper, and the envelope they send your paperwork in, and your account paperwork is on, lambskin. That's all great. But eventually, when you start to go down the mortgage road, you're calling some building in North Carolina, and the guy that you've been talking to, the order taker you've been talking to, Tony, is on lunch break. Then they get forwarded to Barbara's desk, and she's on vacation, and you're in this, inimical vortex of I hope somebody calls me back eventually. So Nate said this all the time too. It's so true. There was a lender way back when that was jamming up one of our agents, and Nate went over and sat in the waiting room for like half a day. Back when he had time to do that, and he knew the guy was in his office because his car was in the parking lot. And the woman's like, "Oh, he's not in. He's in a meeting," and they just waited him out, right? And you're not going to have to do that with Brad. Let me say this concerning that and our friends over at Missile World. When I was in production, every time I had somebody who came to me who went down that driveway, which is never a good thing, so try to get them off that path. But you've got that person coming, they're like, "Yeah, I went on the app and I got all this done, blah, blah." Every one of those people, as it got closer, and I've heard stories, they're doing a better job now, and I'm doing my best to not admonish them in public. But like, I had every deal that I had a client that worked with them, it crashed, and Brad fixed it. So why not save your buyer the time when it's so important that we save them time right now, because minutes and interest rates count? Just get them to Brad. And
I also would add.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I would just add too. Far from missile rate, but even like newer lenders that don't know about the products and they don't really know what they're doing, I would just steer clear. I mean, it sounds like man eat man, but a lot of them, I've had like 4 this year where the lender will like call me the day before closing, is like, "I just submitted to underwriting." I'm like, "What?" Like, it's just like complete. I'm not even kidding. And then I was like, "I've never even heard of this," and I had to like send it rushed over to my lender, and luckily it pulled it through. But
yeah,
there's a lot of lenders that don't know what they're doing.
Yep.
Don't even risk it.
Yeah. With that, we do have that panel next Wednesday. I'm prayerful that Brad or somebody from his team can be at least active in the chat for that, if not join us for the panel, because we'd love to have their expertise too, because we're going to be talking about what's going to help sellers beyond the suitable housing clause feel comfortable entering into this. And really, the other side of that too is, what are buyers and buyers agents doing that are surprising and delighting our list agents and our sellers to get these things to move quickly? So one last question for you, Bradley, before you go chase your kids around. I feel like they chase you around at this point in this age, right? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm about to yell at one right now that just came downstairs. So.
I love all of this. Well, so yeah, Brad's about to go on mute and probably leave the screen. But before you go, I guess what have you seen most recently, Bradley, that has been most legal and most creative, that has been awesome, that you've seen on either side of the transaction, that either the civilian or the agent was willing to put together or ask you, "Hey, if we do this, will that work?" And you hadn't seen it before and it worked great?
So that's a tough one. Hey, there's been some crazy stuff out there. You see, like I don't know if you guys have seen it, like people posting the additional clause section where it talks about hey, willing to buy pizza and beer or whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be, that type of thing, for the sellers, although, for every weekend until closing
Mm-hmm.
or something of that nature. But yeah, there's a lot of creative stuff out there. I mean, I'm yet again going to tell you, your appraisal gap, your local lender, your appraisal waiver, those are probably the most solid approaches. But beyond that, maybe find a connection. I know I've had people that I deal with a lot of VA people that are having their VA clients wear their uniforms when they go to showings,
Yeah.
Things like that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you can do to stand out. I've had deals accepted before, and as my dog walks down the stairs, it makes me think of it, because the people selling the house were dog people, and the person that made the offer worked at the SPCA, and they liked that person because of that,
Sure.
not because they were the best offer.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta find some way to stand out. I know the love letters are kind of a no, but maybe you figure out some other way to stand out and make
Yeah,
yourself.
well, I heard something really interesting said at New England Masterminds, which again is a 6-state conversation we just had down at Mohegan, and I think just in the general malaise of all the gray that they create and what it could get you into, we certainly recommend here that you don't do those anymore. I heard somebody say, well, make sure you don't hand it to anybody, which was alluding to the fact that maybe somebody's buyer mailed one directly to the seller. Also not a great idea. But yes, here's the thing.
You just can't go and deliver it.
But here's the thing, and outside of a love letter, in conversation, or clearly while the agent is seeing, the seller agent is seeing, the listing agent is seeing the buyer, and the buyer is in his BDUs because he just came from base or whatever, if that gets back to the veteran who's selling, that's one thing, and that could be all the difference in the world, because it's not always the money, and that's why I tell you guys all the time, stop saying highest and best. Those are not necessarily. I think the civilians that watch too much HGTV hear those two words and connect them, thinking they're the same, and they're mutually exclusive. Highest, to Brad's point, is what your buyer is comfortable spending, and cleanest, highest and cleanest is with the least amount of contingencies, with the least amount of gray, and with the most efficiency.
Yeah, I mean,
and if we can get people to start to think that way, it's not always the money.
Yeah, at the end of the day, somebody can offer you $500,000 on a $300,000 listing. Doesn't mean it's going to appraise. If they've got financing,
there's that too.
You're what's realistic,
Yeah.
And as a listing agent, I'm sure you guys are looking at, okay, what do I really think this might appraise at? Best case scenario, so let's just say it's 350, and if they're willing to make up another 50 grand, so maybe my seller might get 400 out of this.
Mm-hmm.
If they're willing to do a $50,000 appraisal gap, they're definitely not going to get 500.
Sure.
That's the key.
Awesome. So if you're looking for Brad and his team, I know he has a phone number that doesn't go to his face, but I'm going to give you the one that goes to his face. It's a great time of year to call Brad because he's not at Gillette. And if he is at Gillette next year, he'll be bored anyway because we haven't picked up any players in the last 3 days. Very disturbing what they're not doing at Gillette. They're not buyers at Gillette. They're definitely sellers. Brad Kelly, 603-396-3198. A phenomenal team. You've got teammates throughout the seacoast too, and up to the water around the puddle. So in Wolfboro,
it's Diane.
Yes,
Diane Hooper. She covers Wolfboro and North Conway for our team. She's amazing. Been in the business longer than I have, and she's way nicer than I am too. So that helps.
Yeah.
And then Tammy Cody's in Meredith for our team, and she's amazing also. Very well known name, and people love her. So you've got experienced individuals everywhere, and we are regularly talking about strategies and ideas and things that can try to help our buyers. So if you need any help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
And am I correct? Your fearless consigliere Kelly is getting married. The best part of Brad Kelly, Kelly's getting married this weekend, right?
Yeah, she's getting married tomorrow. I'm the bouncer at the wedding. It's going to be amazing.
God. Well, if you're not going to her wedding, don't worry. It'll be on the news because Brad's going to be there. So congratulations to her. Again, 603-396-3198. Just get a hold of Brad and his team. Brad will get you in the hands of the right person appropriate for the property due to its location somewhere around Winnipesaukee or here on the seacoast. Brad, thank you so much for all the information. I know that you have dogs and children that you might have to leave camera to chase, so thank you for being here. And if you need to scoot, we certainly understand. On to Rose. Good morning, kiddo. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Of course, we've got the better half, as we always say. When I'm breaking company with one of my friends who is a male, and I know that they're married, I always say, remind your wife that you outkicked your coverage. So I'm going to remind you that Joe outkicked his coverage. If you've ever seen a Liberty Mutual commercial, the one where the guy is in the leather jacket, dark hair, deep eyes, and he's the actor that can't get the name right, so you guys always hear me joking about Liberty Mutual, and I call it Bibbity Mutual. I think the first time I saw that, maybe the second time, and I'm always cognizant of the fact I don't want to do this at like 11 o'clock at night because I'll seem like a maniac, but it was a reasonable time of day, I think, Rose.
Text Joe, I saw you.
I texted you, and I said, have you seen the new Liberty Mutual commercial where the kid's like, Bibbity Mutual, line, and he's like, what if I come out of the water? Can I just riff? And I'm like, that looks just like, it doesn't look just like Joe, but it's pretty close.
It's funny because he has a motorcycle and a leather jacket.
He's a doppelganger for sure. Also, because we're going to spend most of the time talking about you, of course. So he is also a volunteer firefighter, correct? Yes?
Yes. Well, he volunteers for the town of Fremont, and then he's also a firefighter full-time for dairy.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So talk to me, and you can fill in the blanks for Joe if you feel the need, but at least, and you and I had this conversation, Joe and I had this conversation when you guys got here, but to introduce you to the masses, like get me from high school graduation to this conversation, or at least to when you got to KW, and bring us up to speed on the story of Rose.
Yeah, we were under his. I was doing sales for corporate America, and
Where was that?
it was just the Everbridge, mass communication. They communicate to the city of Boston, stuff like that. When you get those texts on your phone, weather alerts, things like that.
Sure.
That's basically what I was doing. And then I got into real estate really to pay off my student loans.
Yep.
And we were both under his parents at the time. They're still very big in real estate, the Fulford Group, under Lair Realty. And we kind of just outgrew that situation. We wanted to try Keller Williams, honestly. And honestly, Jeff D'Angelo sold us on Keller Williams Coastal.
Well,
we were
box check for Jeffrey.
Go to
yes.
Salem.
Yes, awesome.
We
Right down the
signed
time
with
and the date, we
Salem,
got
and then-
Jeffrey to do it. Excellent. Awesome. Good.
We signed with Salem, like kind of in a rush decision, and then we were like, you know what, this really probably isn't the ideal location for us because Portsmouth was just more central for us. So we ended up switching over not even 3 days later, and we couldn't be happier. Just the team support at Keller
I
Williams
forgot about
Coastal
that.
is
You
amazing.
joined another market center. You're like, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm really sorry, but bye.
This has been great, and
This
yeah,
has nothing to do with Jeff because he was like, I can't tell anyone it was me. I'm like, okay.
that's funny.
But we really did want Keller Williams Coastal. I think we just were like, that was like the location where we were comfortable with, but we lived closer to Portsmouth, and I was like, no, we got to go back to Portsmouth. Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah. So when you step away from Lair and you, did you have a lot of conversations with other opportunities and then decide Keller was the thing, or was it simply you knew you were going to Keller, and then it was just Salem and then Portsmouth eventually?
Well, Joe loves the Keller Williams book, obviously by Gary Keller. He's read it many times. We both read it. So we were kind of really set on Keller Williams.
Okay.
We kind of went all over local Keller Williams offices, and they're not all the same feel. And that was probably the biggest takeaway, is that everyone really is kind of independently owned and operated, which is kind of what I have to explain to buyers and sellers and things like that.
Sure.
But I just felt like the interpersonal dynamic with Keller Williams Coastal was so much further ahead of the other ones. It kind of was like a no-brainer once we had a minute and a second to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
But
haven't met Nate yet then? No, I'm just kidding.
No. No, I mean, we interviewed with other offices, EXP, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just wasn't really totally in love with the model. That's just kind of how we felt. But
Yeah,
and then, B&H, things like that.
Sure. And I love that you brought that up because it's so true. I think, without fail, it's a great brand. And then when you get down to the fact that, they're all independently owned and operated, you can go to a great Dairy Queen and a really bad Dairy Queen, right? And I think the blessing that we have is that you can get to certain market centers and, with any kind of franchise opportunity, they're looking for investment groups, plural, right? And we were very lucky that Nate went to FSO. Actually, this July 1st will be 18 years. And whether he sees this or not, we're still going to make them. So I'm going to tell you guys because I've brought it up a few times on the Quick Start. There's a great, if you watch the award show, Nathan was making his speech during the staff thank yous. He was doing it downstairs in front of his TV. Under his TV, there's leftover from his birthday, which is coming up again in August. Leftover from his birthday, Susanna found a picture of him from high school. The good news is his little brother, nicknamed Little Dicky works in the mortgage world with yours truly, Brad Kelly. So we will have access to a decent amount of pictures from when he was 18. We're going to make Mullet Dicky shirts that say legal to list for July 1st. So we're going to do something
That's
to make sure
perfect.
that, so we have a birthday coming up. And the good news is he got on that plane, flew down to Texas, went to FSO, Franchise Systems Orientation, and then came back and emptied his piggy bank. And the fact that we have him as the owner who's very involved, that's a differentiator, because otherwise you get somebody who's boots on the ground and they got to tell the other 7 or 9 people this is a good idea, and it takes forever to happen. Where Nate just has to want to will it into, like, we're going to do this, that makes sense, let's do this, and he's here on a regular basis. Like right now, I can tell you based on his schedule, he's probably on the way in, but I know he's in today, and that's not a normal thing for most of these operations.
For sure.
Yeah, and then the fact that he surrounded himself, I mean, he's known Brad since, what was it, your first jail term, second jail term? You guys have known each other since forever. You know, Nate proxied through UNH while Brad was there, right? But you guys have known each other since high school, college, right?
Yeah, it was college we met. There's stories there, but
if
we're going to tell those, we have to be drinking.
We got a safe harbor. That's for the 10 o'clock show, 10 p.m. We'll wait until then. Yeah, but so and this goes right back real quick to the conversation I've had with a lot of people when they found out that a group of us drove down to Orlando for family reunion, and I'm like, well, yeah, on the surface you're thinking, hold it, Lindsay got in a vehicle with his boss / owner and you drove down the East Coast. Well, I've known Nate for 23 years, right? Because we met in a past life, right? So I've known him for 23 years, and I've known JV and Bradley for 12 now, because this summer will be 12 years for me here. So like that's what I think the difference is with this market center is so many of us have been working side by side for so long. It's not just we're driving in to punch a clock and yell at people and leave. I mean, I do yell at people, but we love what we do, so that makes a huge difference. So I'm glad that you guys, I hear that all the time from people. It just feels different here, and it does.
Family.
I just think everyone's just so willing to help each other, which is cool. Yeah.
So you guys get here, and what's the first thing, like, you're excited about coming here, and you knew, obviously, based on the blueprints of, like, the Red Book and Shift, there were some things you're going to lean into that you had never done before. So what would you say the difference between your experience and maybe even your desire to grow in that environment as opposed to when you get here, you're like, cool, and then you realize, wow, we have a lot of work to do. So what was the biggest gulp when you're sitting at your dinner table in your log cabin, by the way? I want to make sure people know that's not a green screen. They bought a log cabin. Yes.
It's funny because nobody has a log cabin. But
Joe's out back with his shirt off, splitting wood, just so the ladies know. Yeah. So they come in later and towel off for lunch. Yep.
He is growing a mustache, which
I love all of that. God bless it. He better do
Looks like
handlebar, or I'll
Luigi.
be disappointed if it's not handlebar. Okay.
Oh my god.
Yep.
Yeah. Probably the contact database, managing that. That was a huge like crash in the face. Like I remember we met with you and you're like, how many people do you have in your database? And I was like, database? Like the database was an Excel sheet. It was like a joke.
Yeah.
So we really learned to utilize every inch of person I've ever met in my entire life. I remember I went through Facebook. I went through my friends' friends, like people I had met in passing, reached out to them. I think one of the biggest thing too was like doing like, it was a little personal, but doing like a letter to everyone and saying like, hey, we moved over to Keller Williams. We're now, we're licensed in Mass and New Hampshire, stuff like that. And kind of reintroducing ourselves almost. It was like a new branding.
Yeah.
We went out and got a new logo. I mean, we really tried to like step it up. I mean, there's a lot of things we're still working on, but yeah, I mean, I think the database was number one where it was like, wow, I really, because you were like, well, you take your database, what is it? You multiply it.
Yeah,
and that's
well,
how many leads you're going to get.
Yeah, well, no matter what, and if anybody's playing at home, you can do this. So the number that we know is that nationally, 6% of the United States are going to be transactional this year, right? In every rolling 12 months. So wherever you have most of your people, right? And very few of us, said with love, have everybody in the same place. right? A lot of you are doing a great job, but you still don't have everybody. You got a 3M note or a cocktail napkin somewhere. Not everybody's there. But I would say go to the resource that you have most of your people in, take that number, and then you multiply it by 0.06. And that's the amount of transactions that if your face was super busy talking to all the humans, you would encounter. And the Parisis might not be transactional, but if I engage with you, you're connected to somebody who is. The pushback I hear from veteran agents all the time as well, cool, Tim, not a real number because I didn't experience that last year. I appreciate that. The number's still real. It's a national average number that rolls year after year after year. What I do know is you didn't invite your face to all of those engagements.
Right.
6% of the people in your life are going to be transactional in the next 12 months. Did you invite your face to the conversation? And most of us didn't, because most of us have our people scattered everywhere. The biggest misconception is that this is my database. No, this is your Candy Crush machine or Wordle, whatever you're into, right? This is the thing that you text with. Very few of you talk on, said with love, right? And you've got your people in there, but this doesn't do, when you guys put your phone down at night, there's no elves in here cobbling the shoes. But if you got them into Command or whatever you're using for a CRM, and you've got campaigns and smart plans going, those people are being touched and spoken to and affected while you're doing other things. That's how you get closer to having the 6% happen, should you choose to.
Yeah, I do think having the hurdle of being able to call and ask for referrals or ask who do you know is thinking about selling is something that just comes so naturally now, where before it was so awkward. And now I'm just like, I don't really care. Like, you're my friend, you're going to give me referrals.
Right.
But you really have to ask, or people aren't going to think about you. And I make sure throughout every transaction I'm asking at least 3 times in person. It's when I meet you at the property, you're about to put an offer in, once the offer is accepted, and then at closing. And it's just kind of how you have to do it.
Yeah, there's a gentleman named, and I always fear I'm getting his name wrong, but I think I'm right. His name is Mike Hicks. If you look up Mike Hicks, KW, The Promise. And his whole team does this. And this is one of those things, like Gary will say to you, everyone at Keller Williams has 2 jobs. Your role and lead generation. So Mike Hicks has the conversation. He's like very excited at the kitchen table. Everything's getting signed up. Kitchen table or conference table, signing your list or signing your buy. And just have the honest conversation. Hey, what do I know? I have yet to experience a perfect transaction. We are not on that ride. Right? This is not happening. There are going to be bumps in the road. The beautiful thing is, and you add your time in service and Joe's time in service and talk about the collective years, right? We have a collective 17 years in real estate, whatever your number is. You guys are too young to have that much of a number, I think. So it's probably smaller than that. But like your collective number, whatever we encounter, we're going to get through. And I can tell you this, when we get you to the finish line and you've had a great experience, I'm going to ask for the honor of doing it for somebody else that you know and love and trust. Are you willing to make me that promise? Because I'm making you the promise that we're going to get you there. And you literally lay the groundwork. And then every time somebody calls, so they call, and if you've got your in-house lender that you work with all the time, when they're breaking engagement with Brad and his team, Brad's like, hey, awesome. And can I let Joe and Rosie know that you have somebody you want to help? Who do you know that we should know? Everyone that touches that client throughout the entire transaction asks. Then when you get to the closing table and you're like, hey, Mr. Lindsay, I trust we did a good job. I feel like we've had a great experience. Rose, Joe, it's been awesome. Yeah, so that's why we were so concerned. You haven't given us an opportunity to serve one of your friends. Was it something we did or didn't do? Oh, my God, no, right? And he's found historically it never really gets to that conversation. They get somebody along the way. But everybody wants to rave about how in love they are while they're still getting married, right? During the honeymoon, right? So, and it's not that you can't ask for it after the fact, but he just sets it very intentional. So has that been a winner for you, asking it for in those 3 locations throughout the transaction? Has it been fruitful? Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to do it more than once. Mm-hmm. You got to get it in there at least twice. Mm-hmm. And then there's follow-up emails at the end of the transaction where I'm asking for reviews, stuff like that. And then I'm following up with them like, hey, how's it going 1 year? 1 month, how's your house? Hopefully it's good. Nothing's blown up.
Yeah, it's always a tough call when you're calling your client that just bought their house. It's like calling your grandmother and saying, hey, Nana, how's your trick hip? Like this could go one of 2 ways,
well,
right?
Some people are very negative and verse and some are very positive. So I kind of, you know what to do.
Yeah. 1,000%. So yeah, well, and I just talked about this the other day, and I think it's such a great example. Nathan always talks about. He's got a great friend, Jeff Vitites, who's one of his phenomenal partners that he works with. He calls him the Michael Jordan of investments, right? So Jeff works for Northwestern Mutual. Every time they get together, whether it's a cocktaini or a coffee, whatever, he knows. It's a learned behavior now that before they break engagement, Jeff's going to pull a piece of paper out of his jacket because somebody on his team has been all over Nathan's social media. And they have obviously the people they've called, the people they've worked with, right? And I can tell you that Brad and I have been called and have been worked with, but they've got everybody else and they're looking, and he would slide a piece of paper over that said Rose Parisi, Jeff D'Angelo, Kaylee Brackett. And he's just going to slide over 3 names and say, Nate, of that list, is it all of them, or who should I call next? Who is definitely the next person that needs our help? And Nate knows it, so much so that Nate said they'd be parting ways, and Nate'd be like, dude, I actually had somebody in mind and you didn't ask. And Jeff's like, oh my God. Jeff's like, oh my God. And there's no sting. There's no funny. Like, how rude. They want to help.
Yeah.
Right?
I have a lender that calls me and goes, who can you introduce me to? And I think and when she said that, I was like, wow, I really have to think. But I was like, wow, I'm going to do that with my clients because it's such a great, just like question to ask people.
Who do you know that I should know? Who do you know that we can help? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we get in our own way with the salesy thing. I don't want to be sales. Well, then don't be, you know?
So I moved away from Popeyes because time management. I think that was huge. I remember I met with you and we talked a lot about doing events, and that I think is a game changer because every time I have an event, I get an influx of business. So I try to
hold
do
it. I'm going to write that down. That's a great idea. Can you make sure that you told Nate and Jeff that I gave you at least one great idea before they walk me behind the barn? Yeah. Every Friday, it's like, maybe this is the week. Maybe this is the week. Yeah.
Well, every major holiday, I drive around, whatever, like drop off pies or bring Mother's Day flowers. And yeah, I do think they're great events, but maybe keeping them till your, your A clients, your A referral clients.
Yeah.
And I've moved over to really focusing on when we do events, calling them, following up, sending invites in the mail, kind of being a little annoying, but I just want to be in their face. And it's more of me being able to have a conversation with them than it is the event. I don't really care about the event. I care if 2 people show up, it's just me and Joe Parisi, that's all right.
Well, yeah, it's so true.
We'll eat all the pie.
Yeah, well, it's so true. I mean, and the reason I've hammered down on that so much, if you look at the 36 Connect, it's part of it. Do a quarterly event. And if you're doing a quarterly event, if you guys have ever read the book, if you haven't, write this down, grab a crayon. It's Brian Moran, Moran.
Oh, sure.
Brian Moran, the 12-week year, right? And if you're functioning your business, you're taking your big, fat yearly goal and chunking it down into 12 weeks. And somebody would be like, well, wait a minute, Timmy, there's 13 weeks in a quarter. Yeah, because you're supposed to take a week off, right? And if you're working, you'll need a week off. So the 12-week year, the mindset behind doing that quarterly event is, it changes. Everybody doesn't want to be salesy, right? So now we'll then change lead generation into lead invitation. Now I know every time I'm hearing from the Parisis or any one of us, the phone rings. It's not like that January 2nd call, like, oh, crap, they're at the office doing some stupid contest with their productivity coach. Don't answer, right? As opposed to, she might be giving away a Peloton. She might be inviting us to a barbecue. It might be Red Sox tickets. She might need bail money. Who knows? But every time I answer the phone, with Rose, it's a good time. Yeah. And it's lead invitation. And you make such a great point. It's like the analogy of the marathon, right? It's all the work you're doing for 18 weeks to get ready for Boston. Nobody sees that happening, but that's where the growing takes place. Running the marathon, and to your point, the event that you and Joe may or may not be at with no people, a DJ and some stale drinks, who cares? Because all the grind, all the work, all the care was put in for the 18 weeks or the weeks leading up to. And then it turns into, hey, we got something coming up. And then you dropping the note in with the save the date. Then the invitation. Then the follow-up. Haven't got your invitation back. Can you make it? And then they say they can. And then we'll see you in 2 days. And then after the event, thanks for coming. Sorry we missed you. Here's what's next.
Right. Yep.
And you could build an entire business. What was that book Gary wrote? Hang on, stand by.
I need to do the say what's next thing.
It could be the one thing. You could build an entire business off a quarterly event. And to your point, it doesn't need to be expensive. Be the mayor of your town, drag people to an event that's already taking place, have a booth at an event. And above and beyond that, like you said, what if it's just with my A clients? Because who are your A clients? People that buy and sell on a regular basis, people that send you business on a regular basis. Like,
Right.
I hear sometimes, like, Rose or Joe will say, not, I'm just picking on you because you're here. Rose will say, well, yeah, it feels weird, but every time I call Brad Kelly, he has somebody for me. Aaron, I won't like this. Marry Brad Kelly, right? Well, he's already married. Move to Utah. Like, figure it out, right? Like, if you've got a repeat offender, every time you talk to them, they have somebody for you. Call them every day. Move in, right?
I know.
Like,
I
yeah,
know,
and we get in our own heads.
Right.
So what's your next event that we're all getting invited to? I'm very excited.
Oh my God. I haven't actually planned it yet, so this is bad, but
That's all right. Well, what would you do at this point? Would it be? It's going to be a second quarter event, obviously, because we only have 12 days left in this month. So what would you do in second quarter? What
we
was the
did a
last one you did?
comedy- The last one we did, it was kind of a combo. We did, well, first we did a photography session with our clients for their Christmas card. We try to do it every year. Big hit, very cost effective. Kind of just pick a location, invite them to it, set
Brilliant.
reminders. Also
Brilliant.
invite their friends and family. I don't care who's coming.
Brilliant.
Give me your referrals.
Yeah.
And it's memorable because people have the photos, and then I mail the photos out with a thank you card for coming. It's just a little extra touch to go, and I feel like it does go a long way.
Right.
And then I share the pictures online. They're tagged in it. So people are kind of seeing that through there. And then the other event we just did was we do a drive for St. Anne's. It's for orphanage kids. I get really involved in that, and we try to get as many toys as possible for these kids. And all of my clients, they're like automatically like, yes, I'll do it.
They love it.
And it's just crazy because it's like I'm not doing anything for these people; they're actually helping me help other people, and it's just the impact is huge. And I think the impact is probably lasting longer than the event.
Right. Well, and I love the events are super strong because there's very little. Not that you guys don't have to do all the things to get people there and to arrange it, but once you're there, there's very little heavy lifting for you, And I'll
So
take this.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, there used to be. I used to put way too much on myself for this event, and then I was like, you know what? Why don't I just dumb it down, simplify it? What can I do? What can I kind of pawn off onto Joe or other people coming to the event?
Or the photographer.
Or
the photographer you're bringing in that you're hiring for
Yeah.
X amount of time, right? And
Yes.
you're going to give them I trust they're probably the photographer you use on all your property.
Exactly.
And now they're a photographer that all your clients fell in love with.
Right.
It's like the closing gift. I always say to people, and do what you're going to do, God bless, but get away from consumables. Because your clients are never going to put up on social media them lighting the candle. They might put up them drinking the wine. But to get away from consumables and to get into experiences, if you can make it experiential and then memorialize it, and that's what you're doing with that photo shoot, right? They're going to an event. They're definitely telling their friends they went to this event. And then there's a picture, and whether you're supporting the frame or not, I don't know, doesn't really matter. There's a picture in their house for quite some time. I would argue probably until the next time you do it. If you're doing this once a year, now people are betting on this.
Yeah.
And then
if it's your holiday card, it's significant.
Yes. Yeah,
I get like
super smart.
I got like 100 cards this year. So it is good. Yeah.
It super stands out, and then you're gonna see how many of the holiday cards that you and Joe got were based from the photography that you had people go to.
Oh, so many of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And the other really important thing to not get hung up on is it doesn't need to be expensive, right? It just needs to, and it doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be overwhelming, and you get your allied resources in, and they're going to be able to lean into it and make it a win for everybody, for sure. That's awesome.
We also did like an apple picking event, which I thought was cool. So, I mean, I gave them, at every event I'm learning from these things. We did it where we had the photographer meet them out in the field, which I probably would just have them meet them, somewhere closer. And then they go on a wagon ride. They go pick apples with their family. They're taking photos. So now they're getting the apples. They're getting the pictures. And then, they're getting a whole day experience with their family. And I'm really just paying for apple picking tickets.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's tons of options where it could be very reasonable. And then if you're able to split it with your lender or the closing attorney or whoever you're working with, it's just going to be that much more affordable. And you can do more of them.
And the other thing, if you do an event, whether you do it in the summer or a lot of people do it at the end of the year, to your point, if you do tiered events for your heavy hitters, because you might have repeat offenders that are now building their investment portfolio. They're buying more than one home a year. They're sending you more than one opportunity to go to kitchen tables a year. Maybe it's you and Joe and maybe 3 or 4 other couples that you take them to, a restaurant, and you have that level. And then you do something, and these people are also still invited to the B and C level too, but you can do something larger, and you're having a client appreciation party, maybe over the summer, maybe during the winter, but you get your step and repeat with your logo, right? So like the red carpet look with Parisi and Associates and KWCLM, and you have your photographer that did all the other stuff for you is going to be there, and they're just doing shots. Get up on the red carpet, get your picture taken. People are going to share those on social media, and that's where the heavy lift goes away because everybody else is telling your story. Cool event. Where were you? Oh, that's our realtor. Didn't you buy your house 3 years ago? Yeah, she's awesome. We stay in touch with her and Joe all the time. That's
It's funny
massive.
you say that because literally at the apple picking event, I had like 3 clients go, wow, none of my other friends' realtors, I had events for them. And then I was like, well, not everyone's the same, basically. But it is cool. Like, you don't even have to say anything, it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And it is very genuine. And I am like we get excited to see them because a lot of them they end up becoming your friends, hopefully lifelong. And it's just cool. It's just cool to see them after the fact.
Yeah, and I know Joe's wired a little differently, so I think COVID hit and he's like, cool, I don't have to talk to anybody. But you're wired differently than that. So when COVID
I have to talk
hit,
to people.
yeah, when COVID hit, we just crested a 2-year anniversary, right? It was March 16th, 2020 is when it hit, right? We really went into lockdown that Monday. So 2
you were in
years
the dark
now.
cave.
Yeah. I'm in a different corner of the corner of the office, but I've been in the corner of the office for 2 years. Yes. When that hit, what was your initial thought? Like, what was your everything's going to change. What are we going to do?
Everything came to a halt for probably a month and a half, 2 months. Okay. People were scared. People didn't want to do anything. But then I started reaching out, and because it was awkward. Because it was like, I'm going to reach out during a major pandemic. People are scared they're going to die, their livelihood, they're old, they have a lot of older family members.
Sure.
And I just started reaching out, and I was like, hey, if you're looking to sell, now's a great time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of framed it. But before I did that, I would call and say, hey, how's it going?
Sure.
How are you guys feeling? Right. Because honestly, I needed the care calls. I needed to talk to them as much as they probably needed to talk to me. I was scared too. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then this is a business where you're alone, especially if you're a realtor. So to be able to have a reason to call someone that was very genuine and then it lead to business was kind of huge. And I still think you can still do it. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. You don't have to call and always be salesy.
It's funny that you say that you needed the care call. I'm a pretty high I. I think most of you have figured that out. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm on camera and I'm constantly talking. Even if the camera's off, I sit here and talk to myself. That shouldn't shock anybody. So in the grand scheme of things, I knew that I'd be okay because I was in constant conversation and seeing people. But we had a stretch where honestly it was Bradley would be in and out. Kaylee was locked in her room. I was locked in my room. Jeff was locked in. Like we were here, but you didn't see anybody. I remember I was like Clint Eastwood at one point. Like I remember hearing Zoller in the hallway, and I was out with my cane waving into the clouds, like, get off my lawn. Like, who are these people? I thought we were getting broken into because it was so quiet.
Well, you kept saying on all the morning calls, which kind of like got me thinking, and I was like, oh, I got to just shift my mentality here because you were like, we're 90 days out. We're 90 days out from your whatever. Like,
June 16th today. You're right. Yep.
Yeah, and then I just kept thinking, like, wow, we're about 90 days out. Like, in 90 days, I got to have some income. So it was kind of
I would like to have a ham sandwich and a cocktail in 90 days, right? And I think what I realized, even though I was connected with people digitally, I realized I required a heartbeat within proximity. Like, it was really weird not having people. And again, I'm going home, wife, kids, cats,
I would just go to Starbucks just to see life.
Yeah, yeah. You run into Will Smith and all the cardboard cutouts in the record store. Yeah, I Am Legend.
Because when I would go on showings, everyone's had masks, they had gloves on. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that was my biggest challenge. And invariably when you guys get started, and I was meeting you guys on screen during that window, but then because I hadn't seen a lot of people and obviously people see Brad, he's very recognizable, right? There's people at our company that you see on a regular basis. But there's these new agents that joined the company in the last 2 years, and they're walking by in the hallway, and they're like, "Hey, Tim," and I'm like, "I have no idea who that is." Like, right? What is going on? No, I I mean, lovely hair, beautiful eyes. No idea who that is. No idea who that is. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, yeah. I was like, hey, Chief. And I'm, yeah.
Now it's almost worse though. Like you see people without masks and you don't know who they are. You know, it's like, can you put a mask on so I can try to figure out? Can you
put a notebook in front of your face? Yeah. I'm very confused. So what was for you, and obviously you got into the care calls and just checking in with people. For you guys, and there were a few, what was one of the blessings of COVID? Like what came out of it that you weren't doing before that became a learned behavior that you're doing now?
Well, now I'm doing my buyer consults over Zoom. So I don't have to drive anywhere. I'm not really meeting them anywhere.
Which is very good now because nobody wants to drive anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also cutting down the time of, I don't want to say wasting time because, eventually they'll probably come to fruition. But if you're not ready to buy, I'm just explaining to people, I'm being very honest. Like this market, people are going at least 40,000 over most houses, 50, 60, depends on the house, the area. So if you're not prepared to do that and go over asking, we really shouldn't even be having this conversation right now. And it's a hard conversation to have, but it's going to stop me from, and any other agents from wasting time. If you're going in and asking right now, you're wasting your time. And it won't always be that way, but for the time being, it is.
So to flip what you're doing on its head a little bit, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Nathan because I'm sure he's busy on a call, but if you call him right now, he would say the same thing. So on behalf of Nathan and our sanity, go back through all the people, and even if you've called them recently because you didn't have this conversation, everybody I used to always say everybody, we've always said everybody you know and love and trust, right? Your Mets. And I would say later that the fourth prong in that fork is people that you know and love and trust and have transacted with. So it stands to reason most of those people are now homeowners. Who do you know anywhere on planet America that owns a home? And if you can create the equity conversation, because it's ultimately just, hey, I'm just calling, me and my team are making sure that all of our clients, all of our friends, however you want to word it, understand what they're holding right now for equity in their home. And whether it's going to be, and of course, with everything changing the way it is, I would argue that most Americans, if they had the opportunity to flex and do the refi and save some money, they may have already done it. Maybe they haven't, and maybe their rates when they came into the conversation were still a little more egregious than they are now because the numbers are moving up. So maybe they're going to refi, maybe they're going to list, maybe they're going to grab some equity and put the deck on or the pool in or whatever the case may be. At the very least, they now know what they have that they're sitting in that they didn't know before.
Oh, yeah.
And even if they don't exercise that, you are, because what is that? What are we really doing? Especially if you go in person, even if you are on screen, that's just a Trojan horse listing appointment because you're having the entire conversation. Then you can just ask one more time, was this helpful? And what do you think, Mr. Lindsay, what do you think your logical next step is? And if they list, like you didn't say, I'm going to come over to list your house. Do you want to sell? Do you want to know what you have to sell? And if we can get people open to that conversation, and if the packet with all the information that you gave to them with your business card is on the island this weekend when people come over, because people are going to start seeing each other soon, it's incredible, right? What's that? Oh, our great friends Rose and Joe swung by. They did an equity update for us. And did you know blah, 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 blah. Oh, shit. Could she do that for us? I'm sure she could, right? It will turn into something.
Right.
And for our newer agents, unlike yourself, our newer agents that are waiting for their first listing, their first kitchen table to do their first CMA, just start doing them now.
Yeah, again, it's the 90-day thing. It's like it's not going to probably be today, but in 90 days, they might call you and be like, you know what, I do want to sell. Yes. I am going to move to Florida.
Yeah, well, it's the faster they have that information, and to your point, when you start to set up those buyer conversations and you start to feed them, because they're like, oh, don't set up a listing cart. We don't want to bother you. It's no bother, right? I always use feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel, Mr. Lindsay. We've had a lot of clients that have felt the same way. What we found is when our buyers are looking at the market as things come on, they're better educated. So when they step into the transaction and step into the conversation, our more educated buyers are having a more satisfactory experience. So let me set that listing card up for you. Because what's going to happen, and this is probably happening to Brad because he buys a lot of things, right? So Erin is sitting there looking, and the house that they want comes up. And she's like, if you sold that stupid truck and half your hockey equipment, we could buy this house, right? Or the boat that they've never used that's sitting in the side yard of the house they want to move out of. Like, look at Brad. What?
I used it for a week.
Oh, my God, I forgot about the boat. That's amazing. That's amazing.
He actually has a boat.
Yeah, he did. He did.
No, I still do.
Oh, you still do? All right, you're making my point, Brad, right? So, yeah, either way, we're reminding them of the value we deliver. It's no skin off your back because it's an exercise that if you didn't do it, you didn't bring any value to them. And if you do it, you're edifying yourself and your understanding of the current market, and you're creating that conversation that they might spread to their friends, right?
Yeah, I think it's honestly half of it is just having a conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Get started, have a conversation, get comfortable on the phones. Yeah.
Go ahead, Brad.
The other thing I would mix in there is, and I've been unfortunately been getting quite a few calls recently from past clients that through the pandemic realized that being locked in the household with the person that they may be married to wasn't so great. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on now because we're coming out of that at some levels. And to kind of bring up one of the big topics of a family reunion, those people that own properties that have more land with them, maybe you're having a conversation with them about, hey, you could bust off a lot right now and make
the in-laws
X
out there.
number of dollars, because land is huge right now.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and it's a somber topic, but Bradley's so right because we had a lot of people, and whether it was a personality conflict or wow, we never really spent this much time together, maybe we shouldn't have gotten married, or quite honestly, and honest conversation, just abusive relationships. Right, a lot of people came out of that, and they're just like, and you're like, oh, you really don't think the house is big enough, or you hate the deck. No, I hate Tim. Like, and I'm going to keep this house. I'm going to keep this house, but he and the cats need somewhere else to live. Right.
Right.
It's an honest conversation. So I think if we're continuing to have those are certainly coming up because I think for a myriad of reasons, some people were shuttered in with somebody and they realized, because this happens all the time. And Kaylee and I were just talking about this. Like every time you go to Mega or Family, you hear Jay and certain members of leadership talking about you got to make sure you keep dating your spouse, right? Because what happens is we get short people. Brad understands. We start to make the focus the kids, and then the kids are off to university, and you're like, wow. We haven't actually we haven't looked at each other in 18 years. Yeah, what's happened? When did you get that tattoo? Yeah, so like and when people grow apart, it's a possibility. But checking in with everybody right now, and when it was winter, it was part of the conversation. You could still ask. People still need it maybe for cooking. Is I think just doing the care call. Hey, I'm just checking in. Me and everyone on my team, we're making sure that that we check in with all of our people. Do you know anybody who's food or fuel insecure? Right? And that could come right down to, even if the person's like, well, it's not great for me and Hewlett-Packard's letting me work from home. Some of these kids, some of these university students have to drive to their brick and mortar. It's not an option, right? So fuel and even heating fuel and home fuel and making sure the gas top works for people to cook. And the other thing is, and we're sort of out of the woods here, and it changes over the summer, when kids are being sent home from school, they were dependent upon, in certain communities, that breakfast and lunch that was being served at school. And this is where normally the high D salesperson would be like, oh, you do have somebody, what's their number? I'll talk to them. And you have to know that if your friend John Q. Citizen is like, I'll get the information to them, maybe John's talking about his household. And we got to park our ego. This is truly just simply a care call. And if you're thinking, well, I want to make these calls, but I don't know where all the food pantries are in my area. I don't know which companies are willing to do fuel assistance. Just lean back into the Facebook page and be like, hey, guys, I was making some care calls. I found a family that's fuel insecure. Who do we have in this part of town that could help out? I guarantee that we have 725 people that are going to be able to give you a phone number, and you come across as Superman, Superwoman. And when the time comes, when these people or the people that you helped affect change for become transactional, they're going to remember Parisi and Associates or whatever your team name is, right? So hopefully everybody that's listening to this conversation does something with that, because I think that never changes, right? It's still getting cold overnight. We're like, oh, it's going to be 70 today. Thank God. And it will still be cold overnight, and people's fridges are still empty. Right. Yep. So we got to be cognizant of that. And now driving to work, driving to school is the next challenge that we're having right now with gas prices. So as bad as we think we may have it, we've had the luxury to have 60 Minutes with Rose Parisi. So we're blessed. Brad, thanks for hanging out with us. Rose.
Well, thanks for having me.
Make sure you tell Joe that I didn't say hello. And that he outkicked his coverage. And if he is growing a mustache, we want a handlebar mustache. We've already voted. Yes.
He said he's in the awkward phase. He can't debut until he's past it or something.
He's in the awkward phase. I'll tell you. I don't know why I tell this story.
I'm like, it's gonna be awkward forever for everyone.
So, it was when I was still selling, and it was like Grovember, and I shaved everything off and I did the mustache. It gets worse. At the time, I'm driving a Ford. I don't know what the Ford minivan was, but it smelled like lacrosse and sorrow and mountain bikes. And I'm over in, I think I'm in Newfields. It's the afternoon. I'm by myself. It just keeps getting creepier and creepier. And it's in the afternoon, and I'm following the bus around the neighborhood. And I'm stopping, and kids are walking up the driveway. I'm like, is your mom home? And like, I went home and showered for 3 hours with a steel brush, and I couldn't get it off. It was the worst idea ever. What I learned was I'd start to bring JV with me, and people would actually answer the door. And don't follow buses, and don't have a mustache in America. But I'm excited to see Joe's. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
He's very pale, very dark mustache. So
Yeah, he'll look better. I did not wear it well. It was not a great idea. Thank you so much for joining us for Coffee with a Capper, Rose. We really appreciate your time. Bradley, as always, if you're looking for help, if referral partners, if you need help from Rose and Joe, please check in with them. What is the number they should call if they want to be a referral partner with you?
603-793-4338.
And you're thinking, well, Rose works in the same market center that we do. Why would I be a referral partner with her? We have a massive footprint and gas money. I'm telling you, it's not crazy. This is the reason we should be talking to everybody that we know that is a realtor. That's a number we throw away all the time. Well, yeah, Timmy, I got 4,000 people on my phone.
Massachusetts too.
Yeah, I've got 4,000 people on my phone. Half of them are realtors. Do they know that you're alive? Do they know you survived COVID, both medically and financially? Do they know you're still here to help? Because people that used to drive, I'll do 60, 90 minutes outside of my epicenter. That number, I guarantee, has changed. My crappy little Ford Fusion was $72 to fill. People are not, people don't want to drive as much as they used to. So be referral partners. If you're looking for Brad Kelly and his team at Annie Mac Home Mortgage, it's 603-396-3198. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Have a great weekend.